Okay, so let's get into a story that sounds like it's straight out of a political thriller, but I promise you it is very, very real. It's all about how a pretty simple machine, a robotic signing pen that's been a quiet part of the White House for decades, suddenly became the center of a huge constitutional and political war.
And bam. This is where the whole thing just ignites. In March of 2025, the current president, Donald Trump, drops this bombshell on Truth Social. He's trying to nullify official pardons signed by his predecessor, former President Joe Biden. And the reason he gives? Not some complex legal theory, but a pen. Or, well, a machine holding a pen.
So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did we get here? How did a robotic pen, a piece of office equipment, spark what many were calling a full-blown constitutional crisis? To figure that out, we first need to understand the tool at the very heart of this whole thing.
So let's just start with the basics. What exactly is this machine that caused such an uproar?
So this is the Autopen. It's not a stamp, and it's not some kind of digital signature you'd see on a PDF. Nope, this is a machine with a mechanical arm that holds an actual pen, like a ballpoint or a Sharpie, and it perfectly recreates a person's signature. Presidents, CEOs, you name it, they've used these for years just to get through the mountains of documents they have to sign.
And the crazy thing is, this technology is anything but new. I mean, look at this timeline. Versions of this go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. The modern Autopen has basically been an open secret in the White House for generations. President Obama famously used one to sign a bill into law while he was in France, and former President Biden used one back in 2024. For a long, long time, it's just been a normal tool of convenience.
Okay, so if presidents have been using these things forever, what's the big deal? Is a signature from a machine even legal on something as important as a law or a presidential pardon?
And this right here, this is where you get to the absolute heart of the legal argument. The Constitution is actually really specific about bills. It says the president shall sign it. But when it comes to pardons, the language is different. It just gives the president the power to grant them. There's no mention of a signature at all. And that little difference, it's absolutely crucial to this whole story.
And check this out. This is the key legal precedent. And believe it or not, it came from the George W. Bush administration. A 2005 memo from the Justice Department basically said what matters is the president's decision and their authorization, not the physical act of putting pen to paper. In other words, the president has to decide to sign something, but they can totally tell a machine to do the physical work. Legally, it all comes down to intent.
And you know, that 2005 memo wasn't some kind of one-off thing. There are legal opinions going back almost 100 years that say the same thing. In fact, a pretty recent court ruling confirmed that a pardon doesn't even have to be a written document at all. The legal consensus here is overwhelming. As long as the president gives the okay, an Autopen signature is perfectly constitutional.
All right, so if the Autopen has this long history and the law seems pretty clear, why did this all blow up into a massive national scandal in 2025? Well, that's where we leave the law books behind and dive straight into politics.
The match that lit this whole fire was a report from the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project. They put out this claim that former President Biden had been using an Autopen for a huge number of his official acts. But the report wasn't just questioning the process. It was trying to connect it to a much bigger, much more explosive political narrative.
And this was the core accusation that turned a pretty boring procedural question into a massive scandal. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee basically said the Autopen wasn't a tool for convenience, but a tool for a cover-up. They alleged that his aides were using it to wield presidential power without his direct authorization, which was a direct shot at his fitness for office.
While former President Biden's response was fast and it was forceful, he totally rejected the whole premise, saying, look, let me be clear, I made the decisions, period. He called any other suggestion ridiculous and false.
So with that committee report out there, current President Trump just took the idea and ran with it. He didn't just question the signatures, he declared them terminated. He called for a DOJ investigation, he threatened perjury charges, and then he made this incredibly symbolic move. He had former President Biden's portrait replaced with a photo of an Autopen. That really cemented this whole Autopen presidency narrative.
So now you've got these explosive allegations, a former president defending his legacy, and a current president pushing the conflict further. So, what happened next?
And you know, all that political pressure, it worked. The Department of Justice, under direction from current President Trump, opened up a formal investigation to see if former President Biden's aides really had, as the accusation went, used the Autopen to wield power without his consent.
But here's the thing.
After months of digging, the investigation just fizzled out. By early 2026, the case was quietly put on the shelf. Why? Because prosecutors couldn't prove what they called a dead-hand conspiracy. They couldn't find a single piece of concrete evidence that a signature was ever used without the former president's direct say-so. The legal bar for that kind of claim is just incredibly high.
So you might think the story ends there, right? Case against Biden's team is dropped, all over. But nope, not even close. Because the intense focus on Autopens was about to lead to a really ironic twist for current President Trump's own administration. And here it is, the big ironic twist. While current President Trump was on the attack, claiming he never uses these things, his own administration posted official pardon documents online that had forensically identical signatures. That's the telltale sign of a machine. The White House quickly called it a technical error and replaced the documents, but the damage was done. It completely undercut their entire argument. So after all of that, the accusations, the investigations, the politics, the irony, what are we really supposed to make of all this? What was the Autopen war really about?
Look, here's the real takeaway. This whole battle was never really about the pen. At the end of the day, the Autopen is just a practical tool that any modern president needs to run a massive government. What this whole controversy shows is how that normal tool was turned into a political weapon, a symbol used to attack an opponent's legitimacy by asking, who's really in charge? Legally, the question is about intent, but politically it became all about power.
And that's what we're left with, really, this big looming question. In a world that's becoming more and more automated, what does a signature, that ancient personal symbol of approval, truly mean when it comes from the most powerful office on earth? The Autopen wars might be over, but that's a question we're all going to be grappling with for a long time to come.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more How Meets History.